what made you choose to combine music with the stories to convey to children?
Well, I think that they have a lot in common with each other. They both music and stories. They work very harmoniously together. No pun intended. They've got they're using the oral kind of communication, and music on its own is wonderful to listen to, of course, but because we live in such a visual world, sometimes having something else to let a child relate to this music in a little bit more tangible way, where they can use their imagination and they can kind of have a way of relating to the music, allows them more the music to come into their soul a little bit more deeply.
With the visuals as well as
the visuals, the talking, the storytelling, it just captures their interest, and they're going to listen more. One will complements the other.
I see. Well, your first story really was a testament to that, about how it engaged the children's attention, and I think there's something to that. I mean, today you have so many ways of entertaining children with new technology and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit more about, just like live performance versus something like...
Well, I don't know. I mean, with the way our children are nowadays, they have so much screen time, and that's really, really increased from when I was a child. And it's not just TV anymore, which was always a concern when I was a kid, but now it's the computer and all the video games and so on, and they're sitting in front of this screen, and very often it's just themselves. So it's very isolating, and it's not interactive really, other than the gaming aspect. But there's not really nothing's offered to develop their own personal imaginations. There's nothing that speaks to their own deep psyches, really.
Right.
Whereas oral storytelling is an age-old tradition, as old as there have been human beings on the earth, I suppose, and it speaks to a child. It speaks to a child at a much deeper place. That's how I've experienced it, and that's my interest in it. It kind of wakes the child up.
Yes, definitely. Can you, being a child yourself, Rosemary, can you speak a little bit to, I guess you've probably played video games, or you've probably seen some movies or TV, and versus live performance. Just what do you think is the difference when you see something in person versus something on a movie?
Well, I don't really have a TV, but
you've played games on computers.
Yeah, I've played games on computers.
So what's the difference between that and
how you feel?
Like in stories, it's more in real life. Like you can actually, it's just you can see actual real people, and it was in the olden days that was a huge thing, and it was like really awesome to go to the theater, but like versus entertainment these days, it's like not that much, since more people go on the computer and watch a movie instead of going to the theaters and watching a play.
Yeah.
But personally, I like both.
Yes, I think there are benefits to both, but I think for that particular imagination, as you're saying, it's much more compelling in person. Ross, having been a teacher of young children, do you notice anything over the years and the way what holds a child's attention over the years?
I think they're still fascinated by stories, and I think it gives them a chance for their creative imagination to things that take place in their mind that is taking place for them when you watch a video or a film or a movie. If they're describing a room and a person in the room, one person might be thinking the walls are orange, and another one's thinking they're green, another one's thinking they're black or purple or dark because of the scary part of the story, and some other girl might be thinking they're pink. And it's all the same story, but all these things take place in different minds, and it's sort of fascinating to think about all the possibilities that are happening, and each child has its own way of relating to different people, or even I've noticed over the years I relate to different characters in poetry and stories and things like that too. As I've gone from being a teenager to being a father and things like that, I identify with the different characters as time goes on.
Yeah, and I would say that as a storyteller, we identify with the characters, and you bring different things to it as a storyteller, but also as a listener. So you're the story changes with the telling, and I've worked with Ross. We've worked in doing music camp out in Langley for several years now. I've heard him tell. There's a couple stories I've heard him tell to the kids the same story, but he'll change it each time.
Yes.
It's different, and the kids love it, and they're just sitting there bug-eyed. And then I'll steal his stories, and I don't know if he steals mine, but and I'll be different in my when it comes out of me. And so a story is a very malleable thing, and it can change just because you've changed as a person. It also can change because of your audience. So if a child, for example, is really frightened, you can temper it with humor, and all of a sudden the giant's a big buffoon instead of really frightening. So you can mold your story as you go along, just like you do with music. It's a similar kind of art form in that sense, and I find that kind of a fascinating aspect of it. And and I've also had interesting experiences with children who it helps them deal with some fears at a basic level. If they can embody in their imaginations or with movement as they listen to a story, or on the drum really loud or something, they can embody that scary character of a witch or a giant or that dark side, then it makes them stronger as a person. That doesn't happen if you're really in the same way if you're just being entertained on the screen.
Right. No, that's true, and it's a lot more personal, and like you said, you use the feedback to sort of adjust how you deliver it or what the content is and whatnot. And I think what you said about helping children and maybe adults also deal with fears or things that are difficult in life, I think that's a lot why sort of like dramas are so popular with people. Or one of my very good friends who works here at the station, actually, my daughter, she had got soap in her eyes when she was quite young, and she was crying. And then that is a story that we often tell over and over again in our little group about the time that my daughter got soap in her eyes, but then her daughter gave my daughter a date, and then she felt better. Like I tried. It's just this whole thing, and they love to hear it again. I was
They want to hear it again.
Right. I was a little bit surprised because I was like, oh, let's not talk about that again or whatever. But my friend knew, and they wanted to hear about it again.
Yes.
It was really funny.
Yes.
So.
It's a way of them dealing with it.
Yeah.
That's how they settle it within themselves.
Yeah.
I can remember my son had a book that I had taken out of the library, and my wife would read it to him, and he'd break down in tears at a certain point in the book. And so she'd finish the story and things would be resolved, and she was very surprised that he asked to hear the same book the next night before he went to bed. And this went on for several days until we had to bring it back to the library. And he would cry at that same point, but it was like he was going through this process of working out his emotions about that situation and seeing it resolved, and being reassured by hearing it over and over again.
Yes.
So repetition is good.
Repetition is good. Repetition and those scary dark characters. I remember with Rosemary. I don't know if you remember this, Rosemary, but we have a book at home, and it's a beautifully illustrated book about Baba Yaga, who is the dark witch character in Russian folklore. And there's a really wonderful picture. It's like a painting, really, of Baba Yaga. She's really scary in this picture, and she used to love that picture. She had to turn to that page and look at it and be scared by that page. This is when you were about 4 years old.
Right.
Yeah, and it was served a purpose somehow in there. And we were doing a show on Baba Yaga, with our group as well. So I think that's where that came from too.
Right. Before we go on, I'd love to get a website about how we could find more about this production. Can you tell us how we can learn more?
Yeah, our website is westcoastchambermusic.com.
All one word.
It's all one word, westcoastchambermusic.com. It's and if you go to the children's programs, it has some nice photos of those masks and body puppets that we were talking about, and a little bit of information on how to get in touch with me.
Okay.